Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you from wherever you're joining me. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me talk about a subject which is very interesting to me. Before I begin, though, I would like to thank all the organizers of this conference. In a time where even the smallest endeavor is wrought with inconveniences, these folks have done an amazing job of bringing us together. So, who am I? I'm an engineering manager at HelpShift, one of the world's leading digital customer support platforms. I am a programming language enthusiast, having dabbled in everything from object oriented C programming to Lisp code on a JVM. I am a long term Clojure warrior who has had the privilege of working with some amazing artisans of the language for the last 8 years. Most importantly, though, I am a pack animal and a father of two cats and a dog. So, if you occasionally hear some barking in the background, that will probably be my wife. So, why am I giving this talk? I've always been fascinated and tormented in equal parts by the notion of concurrency in programming. Well, fascinated because concurrency is really at the heart of computer programs emulating the physical world around us. Wherever you go, you see a significant number of threads vying and utilizing resources from a shared pool. My colleague at HelpShift has summarized this beautifully in this blog on how we can model a typical government office like a multi-threaded system. Tormented because, well, concurrent programming is hard. It's unreliable, non-deterministic, and sometimes an exercise in over-engineering. Even as part of the mobile development team at HelpShift, I've always been more focused on the information processing part of the technology. Fetching data over unreliable networks, processing, storing the data, and communicating to the UI layer about said information when it's available. All the while aiming to keep the holy UI run loop as free as possible to draw those sweet 60 FPS animations. When I started doing server side programming with Clojure, I've again been pulled towards my old fascination, and simulating the emergent behavior of ants is the only problem worth solving. So, in this talk, I'll share my learnings from Clojure's concurrency support and how iOS and Swift developers can benefit from them. So, what is the agenda of the talk? So, we'll start with a brief whirlwind tour of concurrency support in iOS. We'll look at how Objective-C and Swift provide tools for writing multi-threaded code and what patterns iOS frameworks encourage. Next, we'll talk very briefly about what support Clojure offers. Think of this more as a refreshing swag of Gatorade offered in the middle of a marathon. Then, I'll try and share what I think are important learnings for any Swift developer to help write better concurrent code. Finally, I will talk about the problem statement that inspired my journey and that led me to talking about concurrency support in such diverse languages as Swift and Clojure. So let's start with concurrency support in mobile programming, or as I would like to put it, get out of my run loop. In mobile app development, the world of concurrent programming revolves around and is actually tangled up in run loops. A run loop is a piece of infrastructure used to manage events arriving asynchronously on a thread. A run loops works by monitoring one or more event sources for the thread, and as events arrive, the system wakes up the thread, dispatches the events to the handlers that you specify. If no events are present and ready to be handled, the run loop puts the thread to sleep. UI drawing is mostly carried out in a complicated infinite loop, which is supposed to be kept as far away from any hard business logic as possible. When I started out, and up until very painfully recently, the language of choice was Objective-C. The concurrency support in Objective-C are fairly basic. In Objective-C, all objects are mutable by default, as you can see in this code snippet. Properties of objects can be declared atomic, which is essentially exclusive locks around getters and setters. Here, synchronized is exactly what you expect. Only one thread which synchronizes on the same self can execute across multiple threads. There are some ways to write saner code using immutable and mutable versions of basic data types. For example, as you can see, this code adds an element to an array. Here, both the input and the return types are immutable arrays, so we can't really do operations like add object on them. Now, since we can't add anything to an NS array, we create a mutable copy of it and then add an element to it. While returning though, we make sure to return it as an NS array again. Unfortunately though, because of the way the memory allocation works, idiomatic Objective-C seldom ends up looking like this. Swift, being a more modern language, is much better at helping write safe code. Immutability is supported first class via the use of let declarations. As you can see in this code, anything that is declared a let cannot be modified nor can it be reassigned. Function arguments, loop variables, optionally unwrapped values are all let, immutable by default. Swift also makes a very clear distinction between reference types and value types. Reference types are mutable by default, value types immutable by default, meaning a function which changes the self.properties is allowed for reference types but not for value types. For value types, this has to be made explicit by using the mutating keyword. Reference types only pass around references to the object, and any change made in the function will reflect across all references to that object. Structs and value types, meanwhile, are treated as values, but beware. Swift does not prevent you from hitting yourself in the foot here. If a member is declared as a var in the struct, it is still considered to be mutable. Concurrency support in iOS development comes mainly via two frameworks, namely the Grand Central Dispatch System and the Operation Queues APIs built on top of it. Grand Central Dispatch contains language features, runtime libraries, which provide comprehensive improvements to the support of concurrent code execution. With threads, the burden of creating a scalable solution rests squarely on the shoulders of you, the developer. You have to decide how many threads to create, adjust that number dynamically as system conditions change. GCD though takes the thread management code you would normally write in your application and moves them to the system level. All you have to do is define the tasks that you want to execute, add them to an appropriate dispatch queue. GCD takes care of creating the threads, scheduling your tasks to run on those threads. Because thread management is now part of the system, GCD provides a holistic approach to task management, thereby providing better efficiency than traditional threads. Dispatch queues are essentially FIFO queues in which your application can submit tasks in the form of block of code. Dispatch queues execute tasks either serially or concurrently. Work submitted to dispatch queues executes on a pool of threads managed by the system. Except for dispatch queues representing your app's main thread, the system makes no guarantees about which thread it uses to execute a task. You schedule work items synchronously or asynchronously. When you schedule a work item synchronously, your code waits until that item finishes execution. When you schedule a work asynchronously, your code continues executing while the work item runs elsewhere. The main queue and the default global concurrent queues are also provided to the programmer. These default global concurrent queues also have priorities, namely user interactive, user initiated, default, utility, background, and unspecified. Now let's say you add a series of closures to a specific queue, but you want to execute a job only after all the previous asynchronous tasks are completed. You can use dispatch barriers to do that. Barriers are a way to impose ordering on concurrent queues that normally don't execute registered tasks in a repeatable order. Dispatch barriers have no effects on serial queues. Let's say you have multiple tasks which may be added to different queues and you want to wait for their completion. You can group them in a dispatch group. Let's say you start a download for a bunch of URLs on different concurrent queues. But since they are all part of one logical operation, you may want to be able to wait for all of them to be completed. You add them to the same dispatch group and then you can get notified when all the operations are done. Operations are a high-level abstraction built on top of GCD. An operation object is an instance of the NS operation class that you use to encapsulate the work that you want your application to perform. Operations support establishment of graph-based dependencies between operation objects. These dependencies prevent a given operation from running until all the operations on which it depends have finished running. Dependencies are also not limited to operations in the same queue. Operation objects manage their own dependencies, so it is perfectly acceptable to create dependencies between operations and add them to different queues. One thing, however, that is not acceptable is to create circular dependencies between operations. Doing so is considered to be a programmer error that will prevent the affected operations from ever running. Operations also support prioritization of operations, thereby affecting their relative execution order. You may also have support for cancel semantics that allow you to halt an operation while it is executing. Your application is completely responsible for creating and maintaining any operation queues that it intends to use. An application can have any number of queues, but there are practical limitations to how many operations may be executing at a given point in time. Operation queues work with the system to restrict the number of concurrent operations to a value that is appropriate for the available cores and system load. Therefore, creating additional queues does not mean that you can create additional concurrent operations. Dispatch queues themselves are thread safe. In other words, you can submit tasks to a dispatch queue from any thread on the system without first taking a lock or synchronizing access to the queue. Now let's talk about concurrency support in Clojure. Immutable data structures are the building blocks of great concurrency support in Clojure. Once you get a hold of a map or a vector in a function, you are sure that nobody else can mutate anything about that data. You can create new copies of the data though by transforming it using functions like assoc, conj, etc. But the original data remains as it is. Having highly performant implementations of such data structures makes Clojure optimal for server-side workloads. Futures. A Clojure futures evaluates a body of code in another thread. Future returns immediately, allowing the current thread of execution to carry on. The result of evaluation will be retained by the future, which you can obtain by re-referencing it. Clojure futures are evaluated within a thread pool that is shared with agents. This pooling of resources can make futures more efficient than creating native threads as needed. Delays. A delay is a construct that suspends some body of code, evaluating it only upon demand when it is dereferenced. Delays only evaluate their body of code once, caching the return value. Thus, subsequent accesses using deref will return instantly and not evaluate that code again. A corollary to this is that multiple threads can safely attempt to dereference a delay for the first time. All of them will block until the delay's code is evaluated and the value is available. Promises are distinct from delays and futures insofar as they are not created with any code or function that will eventually define its value. Promises is initially a barren container. At some later point in time, the promise may be fulfilled by having a value delivered to it. Thus, a promise is similar to a one-time single value pipe. Data is inserted at one end via deliver and retrieved at the other end by deref. Atoms, refs, agents, and CSPs, the reference types in Clojure. Atoms are the most pervasive Clojure concurrency primitive that I have seen in my short time as a Clojure developer at Helpshift. It is a it is a great tool for representing a single piece of information or a shared state. Atoms ensure that you only write consistent values to their shared state. An atom holds a current value. That value has to be valid. You then send it a pure function which calculates the next value. The atom guarantees that anybody derefing the atom always gets the old value or the new value and nothing in between. The pure function bit is important because if the compare and swap operation actually fails, the atom will retry the transformation until it succeeds. Agents. Like atoms, agents are uncoordinated. You can't modify two agents with any kind of guarantee. The difference is all about which thread does the work. Swap happens in the current thread of execution. Send, on the other hand, happens in a separate thread and the calling function can continue immediately. Send will process the computation in a thread pool. If your function does do a lot of work, Clojure gives you a function called sendoff, which runs each task in its own thread. Use that if you're doing IO or a lot of computation. Refs. Refs implement a software transactional memory. Essentially, you start a bunch of coordinated changes involving multiple shared entities. But these are all isolated to everyone outside the transaction. Once the changes are calculated, the transaction either commits all the changes or fails and starts over again. All the while, rest of the code is oblivious to these updates until the commit succeeds. Refs are an essential ingredient in the ant simulation problem, as you will see in a bit. Communicating sequential processes allows the description of system in terms of component processes that operate independently and interact with each other solely through message passing communication. Core.async is an excellent example of a library which provides CSP style concurrency semantics. You pass data around via channels, use extremely lightweight thread-like entities via Go blocks, and you have the ability to block on a set of alternatives using alts. So having seen both these flavors, let's now discuss what I think Swift developers can learn from Clojure. Firstly, prefer immutable data. Use let instead of mutable vars. Wherever possible, use let declarations both in functions and in objects. Let declarations in functions will help you avoid accidentally mutating a value. Let declarations also help the Swift compiler optimize code since it knows certain data will never change. Let declarations in Swift structs is also critical if you want to protect against piecemeal state mutation. For example, as you can see in the code in the lower half, even though the stubborn person struct is a value type, because its members are vars, we can do stuff like directly changing the age. A better pattern is the code above, where all the members are defined as lets, and then we can have functions which return new data by performing some update operation. Think of this similar to an assoc for maps. Now, even though we don't really have persistent data structures which are memory optimized, Swift's memory management generally means that if your workload is not extremely heavy, these patterns will give you a lot more benefit in the long run. Value types. References to a class instance share data, which means that any changes made by any reference will be visible to all other references. A struct, on the other hand, is a value type, and it will create unique copies for each new reference. With this, structs have the benefit of mutation in safety. That is, you can trust that no other part of your code is changing the data at the same time. This makes it easier to reason about your code and is especially helpful in multi-thread environments where a different thread could alter your data at the same time. In addition, we can also build expressive concurrency primitives in Swift. Swift support for functional programming and a decent collection library means that it is actually a very viable option for writing better concurrent code. So as you can see here, this is a simple implementation of a future which can perform a long running operation on another thread and then give back the result to the calling thread to consume. Similarly, we can build promises where one thread can calculate the value and the other thread waits for it to be available. Interestingly, Objective-C's unit test frameworks have had a similar pattern for quite a while now, with XC test expectations and test expectations wait for expectations. But this has never made it to the standard app development frameworks. Delays can also have an interesting use case in mobile apps, where some DB fetch can happen in a delay, and if some runtime condition in the code actually never needs the value, it is never fetched. If required, the DB fetch will also happen only once. Agents, on the other hand, are actually quite a natural fit for mobile programming. Essentially, the entire GCD framework encourages the use of async actions sent off to some entity in FIFO order. The only and perhaps a very critical difference is that the agent abstraction is tied to mutable state, and all the functions are dispatched on it to update the value from an old value to a new value. Atoms are actually quite interesting in that they already have some very low level support via stdatomic.h. So if you can imagine a typical scenario of a UI object having a list of message objects which may be added, removed, and updated from different threads. And if this object can be wrapped inside of an atom, concurrent code would be so much simpler and easy to reason about. STMs. This is actually something I'm really interested in building in Swift. I've made some initial progress here with a naive implementation of an MVCC STM similar to Clojure's implementation. The aim here is to take this further and see if I can really build out proper transaction support for more complicated coordinated changes. As you can see in the code here, we have a transaction.doSync method which takes a block of code and creates a transaction from it. Accounts here are ref types which have a set method which change the value and a deref method which returns in transaction values when inside of a transaction block or the current committed value outside of it. Clojure's implementation though is actually quite a lot more complicated in reality with barging and multiple state transactions, etc. There's a wonderful paper and a GitHub repo to go along with it, which explain how Clojure's implementation works using Clojure itself. Also, once I am able to build this out, hopefully it will improve the Ant simulation code too, which, as we all agreed, is the only aim of any concurrency tool. Now let's discuss the big ant in the room. So what is the ants colony simulation? So essentially it is a problem where there is a colony of ants foraging and bringing food home. Each ant is represented by an independent thread of execution. The world is a set of locations. Two ants cannot be in the same location at once. Every ant has to be in some location at all times. The UI thread is observing and rendering the world concurrently while all the ants are going through their own behaviors. Now, when I started thinking about how the ant simulation could be written in Swift, I began with the most critical part of the puzzle. The restrictions of two ants not being in the same place and every ant being in some place all the time. This all the time bit is the hard part. Essentially, you don't want anyone to observe the ant when it is in the middle of making a transition. You want the UI thread to only see the previous location until the move is complete, or you want it to see the new location once the move is complete. Initially, I started exploring what kind of STM support might be available in Swift. I came across an interesting library called Concurrent. This has some very nice concurrency primitives like STM, channel, etc. But unfortunately, the STM implementation still seems to be slightly work in progress. So I had to abandon that route. Eventually, I settled on two approaches. Solve the problem at hand using ordered locking and start understanding the MVCC STM and attempt to implement this in Swift. So as of now, the Swift solution uses locks. Every ant locks three other target cells in column major order and makes the move. Even though this solution isn't as optimistic as the original Clojure one, the performance is quite passable, as you will see in the demo. Here, as you can see, the ant starts from a home location and carry out their behaviors, which include foraging for food, picking up food, returning back home, and leaving pheromones when they're coming back. This solution is currently running as many threads as there are number of ants, so 100. Let's briefly look at the demo. Let us now briefly look at some code. CreateWorld is a function which creates a two-dimensional array of cell objects and randomly places some food in certain locations. It also designates a set of locations as the home and places all the ants inside of them. The runWorld function then triggers off threads for every ant that is placed in the world. The behave function you see here is the main logic which controls how an ant changes from one location to another. So in order to do this safely, we first figure out which cells are possible candidates for the ant to move. We then lock the cells in order via the write and execute method. Once the move is done, the behave function returns the new state of the ant and the loop continues. An interesting challenge that I enjoyed solving while writing the code was to come up with Swift equivalents of higher order functions like partial, juxt, and various ranking functions for sorting on food availability, pheromone levels, etc. Now coming to the next problem that I set out to solve, which was to use core.async channels to implement the same solution. When it comes to CSP, I think the best way to think about it is where we share memory by communicating with other processes. Put more simply, CSP does very well when it comes to data flowing from one place to another. So in the case of the ant simulation problem, I think the ants themselves are the best representation of data which needs to flow. From the diagram here, every location is an atom which has some properties like amount of food, pheromones, etc. Every ant lives inside of a channel of length 1. Now to make a move to a neighboring channel, the ant doesn't really need to check if somebody is already there. It can just wait for its turn for the other loop to remove the ant and empty the channel. One of the problems that I ran into was if I want to read information about an ant, I would need to take it out from the channel, read it, and put it back in. But during that time, there may be some other ant which is successful in writing to the channel, and now I am left with an ant and no location to put it back in. So, for the UI thread to render this, my proposal is to create a custom buffer which implements the core.async buffer protocol. This custom protocol can then have a peek method which can give us the ant information without having to take it out from the channel. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a demo to show you here at the time of recording this talk, but hopefully by the time we meet again, I'll be able to have been code this out. Now, what were my learnings of all this? So honestly, when I started out, I just wanted to solve the problem because they were there and they were a hard enough challenge for me. But now that I've attempted them, I think the biggest gain has been the learnings around how two very modern but very different programming languages help the programmer write safer multi-threaded code. Concurrency support in iOS is built for async task execution, which doesn't require coordination. So it's a natural fit for stuff like downloading, processing a bunch of images, and then updating the UI thread with results. Secondly, given the tool that Swift developers have at our disposal, immutability is more accessible than ever before. So ensuring that most of your code is dealing with immutable values is a matter of programmer discipline. Make your objects value types. Write functions which do very minimal side effects. And update global state in a very few places protected behind sane control primitives. Java Util Concurrent is a set of utility classes which have largely enhanced the safety of writing multi-threaded programs in Java. It's a battle-tested library with excellent support for executors, thread pools, concurrent collections like hash maps and blocking queues, etc. If the Swift standard library wants to improve language support for concurrency, this would be a good starting point. There are some good open source attempts at doing this piecemeal, but I think first class language support here is crucial. Now, immutability is all fine and dandy at the fine grained pure functions level. But to solve any real problems, our code has to interact with and mutate some state. And for this, I think Clojure notion of having references which can be mutated to point to different immutable values and having strict rules around its mutation are really solid building blocks. And I think they are Clojure's secret sauce. Now, the next steps for me here are probably to improve the STM to use more fine-grained locking and replace the ordered locking in the ANT solution that I made by actually using the STM that I write. So in conclusion, I would say that I'm glad that I did this because understanding how another language solves some problem well gives us immense learning to improve our own language of choice too. Thank you.